It was a leisurely morning, and I slept in for the first time in months. I could hear Mick and Tally making a special breakfast, and though there was part of me that wanted to keep sleeping, I was also really excited to spend the day with my family. It was Mother's Day, so that meant yummy food, beer later in the day, and going wherever I wanted to. It was amazing. Last year's Mother's Day was magical, and I know that's a luxury not every mother has. Because even in normal times, Mother's Day is complicated. I'm reluctant to preach about it because people's experiences with mothers and mothering are so divergent. Some have wonderful relationships with their moms, and some are fraught. Some have cherished being a mother, and for others it might be something that was more complicated. Not to mention that it often leaves out people who haven't had biological children and yet have bettered the world with their love. And for anyone who's lost a child or a mother, Mother's Day can be especially unbearable. In my family of origin, Mother's Day was both a wonderful celebration and also a little more complicated. It was a day to do nice things for my mom, but also a day to give my dad extra love too, because it was the anniversary of his mother's death. So I know firsthand that it's so much more than a Hallmark holiday. It's loaded. And frankly, it feels even more loaded this year. Not just because we can't go out to a nice brunch. All over the world, mothers of adult children are completely isolated. And parents of small children have very little bandwidth. As a parent of a young child, I can say it's really hard to feel optimistic about parenting right now. Because I have no idea what kind of world I'm passing on to my daughter. And most of us are just trying to survive one day at a time while we simultaneously try to plan for months of childcare and education. I don't know how much damage will be permanent, and that really puts a damper on the celebration. I want to just say Happy Mother's Day to all you wonderful mothers and caregivers out there, and let that just be the message. But this year, that feels disingenuous. Because just about every kind of parenting this year is accompanied by some kind of grief. Whether you haven't had more than an hour to yourself in 8 weeks, haven't hugged one of your kids in 8 weeks, or you're reminded of the support you don't have in family right now. And from a child's perspective, suddenly our parents are vulnerable in a way that they haven't been before, and we can't just go hug them, say thank you, and fix it. Anxiety is hovering around this day because it's so much harder than usual to simply be present with joy and love. Some of the problem is that there is an intrinsic issue with the way that we celebrate Mother's Day. Because every time we have a day or even a week to specifically appreciate a person or a job, it usually means that they go underappreciated the rest of the time. And parenting, especially for women and non-binary people, definitely falls into that category. I've often heard people ask stay-at-home moms what they do all day, or refer to a couple with a stay-at-home parent as only having one working parent. We don't value parenting and housework as a society. So one day a year, we say thank you for the job we'd rather pretend isn't actually the hardest job any of us have ever had. Most parents love their kids more than anything in the world. But love doesn't make up for sleep deprivation. It doesn't clean the house or cook the food or make sure your children who find increasingly creative ways of trying to get themselves killed stay safe. It doesn't pick them up when they cry, holding them for hours while body parts go numb. It doesn't negotiate for you with the toddler who just wants to watch another Sesame Street rather than getting dressed. It doesn't fill you with an endless supply of patience. And it doesn't magically make you feel fulfilled. For those who have kids that have long moved out, love doesn't provide company. It doesn't give a hug to the parents whose children, as the heart that lives outside their bodies, are suddenly unable to visit. People do these things. Bodies that are bone tired and vulnerable do these things. Mothers do these things. It is a full load, and it's heavier this year. And fathers do them too, but on a societal level, it's not the same. There is a phenomenon that feminists often refer to as the mental load. And I happen to be one of the lucky few for whom the burden of the mental load doesn't squarely fall. But the idea is that often in relationships, one person, usually women when it's a heterosexual relationship, assumes the burden of being the project manager of parenting and household chores, while the other will help when asked. But the problem is that the same person is also usually the primary caregiver. The mental load is a full-time job, and one that, if I'm being honest, isn't exactly my strong suit. And when you add in-person care taking and potentially a non-household related job to the equation, suddenly many moms find themselves with 3 full-time jobs. And the pandemic has increased the mental load for parents exponentially. Because suddenly they have to manage schoolwork in a new way, make sure their kids understand all the technologies, make sure there's enough food in the house for a week, tend to sudden anxiety and regression that comes up for the kids. It's Herculean. Oh, and we're supposed to be well-adjusted and cheerful while we do it. And I am truly blessed to have a full partner in this. I don't know what I'd do if I were trying to manage the mental load by myself on top of everything else. It leads me to really wonder how we, as a justice-seeking community, can lessen the mother load of a mother's load right now, because it hasn't been sustainable for decades. But for the first time, I think we're really seeing how unsustainable it is. Just how essential parents really are. And this may very well be a new normal. So how can we as a community re-envision mothering in a way that honors the load we carry in this world year-round? I personally come to the emotional resources that have probably been my greatest teacher in parenting and in ministry. And that's recovery programs like Alcoholics Anonymous, Codependents Anonymous, and Adult Children of Alcoholics. I don't abuse substances, but addiction systems go well beyond the substance. And I would argue that they've permeated society in ways that are invisible to us. And that's why seeing ourselves in societal recovery can help us adjust how we live, parent, and accommodate parents in this new reality. Recovery is a constant threshold, giving you opportunities to transform moments of challenge into moments of insight, growth, and joy. There is a powerful lesson in recovery about agency. You may be familiar with the Serenity Prayer. Grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot control, the courage to change the things that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. When we focus on what we have no control over, a global pandemic, for instance, we are unable to move forward. But what's even more powerful is that recovery has a message for moms who are overburdened and drowning in the mental load right now. Recovery doesn't mean perfection. It means progress. It means catching yourself when you're tired and angry and asking what you need in that moment. It means taking care of yourself first so that you actually have the emotional resources to give to your kids. And if you are someone who thinks they might not be sharing in the mental load right now, it means asking yourself what you need emotionally to see yourself as an equal partner, because you aren't less capable, just conditioned to think that you are. I often think of recovery as grief wanting to be unmasked. And Mary Catherine Ham, a journalist for The Atlantic, had a story that solidified that perspective for me. Because she spoke about her experience losing her husband suddenly in a bike accident, leaving her alone, 7 months pregnant and with a toddler. And she shared that in her grief, the biggest shift for her was not how she viewed parenting, but how she viewed herself. And after she gave birth to her second daughter, she struggled some with drinking. But she also knew that wasn't really the issue. It was grief. And she had to start by taking it an hour at a time. And ultimately, she released the idea that she was broken and believed that she was strong and that she would be enough for her kids. And the mistakes became okay. And she became a better parent for it. And this is what we have to believe in order to get through this. We aren't broken or wrong. We're strong precisely because we're a work in progress. One of my favorite recovery quotes is a slightly different take on the Serenity Prayer, and I repeat this to myself daily. Grant me the serenity to accept the people I cannot change, the courage to change the person I can, and the wisdom to know that person is me. Because the only person we have control over is ourselves. And once we accept that, we can remember not to carry the burdens that aren't ours. Whether from the perspective of a daughter who wants to lift the weight of stress off of their parents, or a parent who just wants to create a world that is safe and nurturing for their kids. We don't have that power. And we don't control anyone else's emotional self. All we can do is accompany our kids and our parents. But accompaniment is actually the most powerful gift. Even more powerful than if we truly could move Earth. Because it shows that you believe in their wisdom and agency. It shows that you choose to participate as an equal with the household burdens that usually fall onto one person. It is okay to ask our parents and our kids to join us in our struggle. Because being falsely strong models teaches that they should be falsely strong when they aren't. I'd rather be real and show my daughter that she can be real too. This is the best way to honor the burdens that we carry, to be together for them without trying to take them away. Because when we're together, they do lessen. Because we know that we don't have to be the perfect parent or the perfect child. We simply have to be our fullest selves, seeking revelation and recovery in this mess that we're living in. One of the things that I love about Unitarian Universalism is that we don't hold revelation or even truth to be sealed. It is an ongoing creative process, and so are we. We are an ongoing revelation too, and being a mother is an ongoing revelation. A dance where I'll fall, get back up, and know that falling won't stop us from continuing the dance. So moms, don't carry the weight of the world this year. Just dance. And remember that you have a community that will always be your dance partner. Blessed be, and amen.